every time I enter Mexico. It seems vast and full of possibility. But I end up captive in some dusty corner every time, forced either to flee north or wait out my sentence where I am. This time, I'm in San Miguel de Allende, hemmed in by heat, responsibility, and the same thick walls and cobblestone streets. I knew what I was getting into. I'd been here before, collecting stories, then telling them to the world. But I'm looking over my shoulder now for people whose stories I'd stolen before, like returning to the scene of a crime. That's why early mornings are best. Egrets soar over purple jacaranda. The air's cool. From pepper trees, woodpeckers call. Flocks of stilt birds fly to cracked reservoirs above the city. And the air is finally cool. This morning, fireworks boomed when the statue of El Señor de la Columna arrived, with anguished face and bloody limbs paraded through flower-covered streets, where the poor pin hopes to his purple robes. Bells ring, voices are soft in the street, and I feel safe. By afternoon, though, the street's an inferno, and at sunset, a field across the valley flares into flame. At night, I descend into sleep, troubled by gusty winds, and I dream of Judas. You see, all week, townspeople have been building life-sized effigies of the betrayer they'll destroy on Easter Sunday, festooned with fireworks and torched in the central square. And in my dream, I watch a procession of Judases descend a set of stone stairs. Each turns a mocking face toward me. You and me, we're not so different, they say. You with your stories betraying their tellers. Troubled sleep, yes. I never thought I'd come back to face those whose stories I'd carried away like 30 pieces of silver from Mexico before. So during Mass, before the burning, we're supposed to contemplate Judas, ask ourselves, have you followed the Lord or betrayed him? Reflect on your mortal soul, say the Judases, with grave smiles of sugar skulls. Reflect on what you have traded for fame and success. Reflect on your mortal soul, because in Mexico always is open the door to death. Only in the early mornings do I rest. 2 weeks before Easter Sunday, the city's crowded with tourists and townspeople on the streets, and I mingle, thinking I'm unobserved, until holy water splatters my face and chest, heavy drops flung by a priest I didn't see coming, and suddenly I'm swept along with the the Happy Palm Sunday procession, dressed in red and white with banners raised. Each group of young people chants in turn, Cristo vive, Cristo vive, que vive, que vive, que vive. Bells ring, drums pound, palm fronds and paper flowers march over cobblestone streets strewn with chamomile. And Christ on his donkey is borne aloft on a platform by 4 strong men. After 2 weeks of such processions, their cadence ever more somber and grim, there's nothing left but the burning of Judas. Sometimes the effigies are fashioned in the image of politicians or rich men, devils or witches, but in my dream, they all have my face. A circle of fireworks around their waists, they're strung over Main Street. Rockets lit, they spin wildly until the charge within ignites and they explode in shreds of paper and clouds of smoke. The crowd cheers and huge plaster heads drop to the pavement, carried off by townspeople like a prize. But for me, the burning is not admonition, but inspiration to continue my quest for confidences I will one day sell. Because recently discovered texts suggest an alternative interpretation of the betrayer's act. The Epistle of Judas scholars say shows that Jesus asked him to commit the betrayal. Without Judas, his destiny could not be fulfilled, and if I had not told their stories, the protagonists would not have become the heroes they now appear. Betrayal is necessary for transformation, the role of teller as sacred as the protagonist, thus transfigured. At least that's what I tell myself while collecting stories from new friends. But after the festivals are over and crowds thin, I stay off the streets. It's the hottest time of year, I tell myself. If it would rain, if only it would rain. Weeks later, though, the corn gods are still waiting, and as time for planting draws near, heat builds, clouds form in the distance. Thunder rumbles, leaves toss, a few fat drops fall, and then it dies, leaving stones dry and in my mouth a taste of dust. Empty winds whip the curtains and clouds cover the moon. Because the calendar says it's the end of May, though, the Chichimecas go ahead with their celebration of the rains, the festival of the Santa Cruz in the Valle de Maíz neighborhood in dry hills above the city. Plume doomed Indians with painted faces dance. Everyone feasts, shaman offer cleansings, and they celebrate with rockets all night and flowers on cobblestone streets, wilting all day in the heat. They are giving thanks for the rains that have not come, asking for a good harvest, though they no longer farm. And at the end of the week, they dress up to reenact the war between Chichimecas and Spaniards in a field strewn with trash next to the highway. At the end of the battle, when the Chichimecas lie dead, their shaman appears and brings each warrior back to life again. And that night, it does rain, as if summoned by rockets, dances, and flowers shriveling in the heat. Clouds shroud hillsides, and I slip out of town early next morning, a bag of stories over my shoulder, just like the time before. And yes, I'll be back. I'll be back. I'll be back. Thank you.